All right, so we're going to just, I wanted to spend a little bit of time this afternoon sharing a little bit about my own continued journey, my own spiritual explorations, and talk about Mary Magdalene and the divine feminine and some of the things that I've been working with and looking into. About 18 months ago, I think I began this process of really beginning to take a harder look at sort of Gnostic Christianity and at the same time Mary Magdalene. And how many people are kind of familiar with the role of Mary Magdalene in the life of Jesus? Raise your hands if you have a little bit of a, okay, so there's maybe about a third of the people. But and Mary Magdalene's a name and a character that the church in its history has said has been the repentant prostitute. I'm just going to say that story is not actually true. The role of Mary Magdalene really is the partner of the person of Jesus. And she really represented the embodiment of the teachings of Jesus, going forward, and she ends up living her the most of her life, or the rest of her adult life, as she flees Palestine, and she ends up in the south of France, and as she's in the south of France, she's also actually with Mary, the mother of Jesus, and probably Joseph of Arimathea, and others that were part of her party. And she lived in a cave up in the mountains in the south of France. And there's actually a basilica that you can take a pilgrimage to of that cave. And I plan to do that sometime. And Elaine and I were comparing notes, and we're maybe looking at 2026 as my earliest possible journey to that time. But this interest into Mary Magdalene is really been fascinating. I started to dabble into it. I came across Megan Waterston as one of the theologians that did a deep study of her and has recently written a book in the last few years. It's called Mary Revealed. It's back there on the table if you want to take a look at it. It became sort of a pivotal book for me in terms of looking at not only the early Christian, but like that early Gnostic movement, the early movement of Christianity, and really has become, again, a pivotal piece. About a year ago, a little over a year ago, is when I met Elaine and I had a reading with her, and in the channeling reading, I think it was Wang Shan that came through and was saying that, had said to me that I was going to enjoy learning even more about this esoteric Christianity and the metaphysics and the stories around Mary. And it was after that, and talking to Elaine and getting some more resources, that's when I really, my studies really ramped up and really pushed me forward and really began to get me going along this particular topic. But what I have also found is that as I've been talking to former colleagues, I call them former colleagues, because I'm not so much in the active ministry now, but former colleagues, one in particular, Coke Tani, I just spoke with her about 3 weeks ago, and we hadn't talked since the pre-pandemic. So it's been several years since we had talked, and we just decided to kind of, we need to connect. And so as we connected, one of the first things she says to me is, I'm getting into the divine feminine, Mary Magdalene, and I'm like, oh wow, okay, this is what I'm, we got all excited, right? You know how that goes, and we got all excited that we're all into this same thing here, and I was able to give her some resources that she has yet to build out or to look into, and then she gave me some more resources as well, and so I share this because I think for most people that are not maybe clergy or people that are deep into this type of theological work, you wouldn't necessarily know this is a thing, or this is a developing thing, and this is sort of an emerging thing. But I think it is becoming a thing, and it's something that you want to kind of keep your ears open to. But at the same time, I think for most people it's hard to sort of like get into this sense of what does it mean that to be into the divine feminine, and that the divine feminine is coming into our space, our time, our place at this time. What does that mean? And it's maybe hard to relate to. Let me ask, how many people feel like they relate to the divine feminine? Okay, there's a few, right? Okay, but most of us, I think, that is hard to relate to. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what I think that means, or how we could maybe access that, or give you a different access point to it. One of the things that, as you go into these studies, you discover is that the divine feminine, when Mary Magdalene is sort of talking about that type of energy and that energy of God, it's not really just about the female energy, but it's really about a balance between the male energy and the female energy. It includes both. It really is about a balance, having a balance. It's about perhaps, it's the yin and yang, it's the aggression matched with nurturing or compassion. It's the two are tied together. And then the other thing about Mary Magdalene is ultimately it's about going inward, and going inward into yourself to find the divine, to find God. And that ultimately, that's what Mary Magdalene, the early followers of Jesus, that's what they were actually talking about, was going inward. And that's where you will truly discover God. But to get there, you have to have sort of a balanced soul. Your ego can't be too overblown, or it can't be too wounded and too traumatized, because you won't, in a sense, be able to find that space where the divine is existing within you. And so it's really about going within. When you think about the parables of Jesus, there's all these little parables about, a man goes out into a field and he finds the treasure, and then he goes back, covers the treasure up, goes back, sells all his belongings, and then buys the field, and so that he could now hold that treasure. What that treasure is, the discovery that the divine is within yourself, within each person, and that you're going to commit everything to it to really get to that particular treasure. Because what that treasure is your connection to that divinity that is outside of you. And so that is really what they were talking about, I think, when they're talking about the divine feminine. It's going within. And I think it's, maybe another metaphor you might want to use is the Force in Star Wars, right? Because when they talk about the Force, it's really about the balance. It's a balance of the good and the evil. It's a balance of all the energies that are in the world. You have to find this particular balance. And again, it's about this balance within ourselves. But I think it's also interesting that it is at this time that sort of the divine feminine is coming into play, at least within sort of religious communities, or this idea is beginning to gather some steam. And you people may wonder, why now? Why now? And I think it's very appropriate that it's happening now, because, you know, when we leave here today and we go out and we get our emails, we get the news, whatever we are dealing with, one of the questions we are always now asking is this real? Like, so many times Chris is asking me, I got this text, it looks real, is this real? Or, you know, and you're watching your YouTube shorts or you're watching Instagram, it's like, is that real? Because AI is so amazing that you're not sure what is real. Or when you hear on the news, you're not sure what is real. I mean, across the board, you don't know what is real. You don't know, and you don't know if, like, this organization, what they're saying is real, or that organization, or, you know, we no longer, it's so hard to know what is real. So for us to know what is real is going to require that we go within ourselves and we find that balanced place within ourselves so that we can connect to the divine, and then that's what we will know is real. It's within ourselves. And, you know, I believe that was always the original message of Jesus and his early followers, along with Mary Magdalene. And that's what they always, in a sense, intended to get out in the world, was that the kingdom is within. It's in there. And yes, you have to have sort of a balanced sense of yourself. You can't have an overblown ego, or you can't be overly traumatized at that point and then feel like you really understand what's going on. But it is still there. And so the whole process of spirituality is sort of to find, you know, that place where you are in touch with yourself. So in doing so, you begin to get in touch with the divinity. I really think the panelists that we had this morning, basically we're telling that story, was their connection with themselves, going within and getting into their particular stories, and then in a sense sort of like discovering not only themselves, but I think they're discovering even something even beyond themselves. So anyway, so that's one of the things I wanted to share about this idea about the divine feminine. And before I go any further, anyone have a comment or any questions? Or so accepting everything. Oh, Gail, thank you.
You know the Dan Brown book?
Yes.
How accurate was the
So how accurate is Dan Brown, the Da Vinci Code?
Yeah.
Okay, so so how accurate is Dan Brown, the Da Vinci Code?
Like, did he mention the basilica that you were talking about? I mean, I can't remember.
Yeah, he talks about Mary Magdalene being Jesus's partner, and so I think there's plenty of he's drawing from, I think, actual evidence that, you know, that could be true. Now, whether that lineage carried out through France and then through the bloodline, he drew that from a couple other authors, and I actually don't think that part is accurate, but whatever I think is accurate, I don't have any more evidence than he would have evidence for that. So, you know, I think he did a fair job. Yeah, so, but that, yeah, the Da Vinci Code, Now, I know a lot of people that are into the divine feminine would kind of like scoff at Dan Brown, but I think he does bring that work to light, you know, and he's also very clear. He's writing fiction, and so you know, and along those lines, I think there is some levels of accuracy. Okay, you're right. Okay, so one other thing that I want to talk about, one other aspect of this is, it's been kind of interesting too, because when I went to Japan was just a magical experience for myself from the beginning to the end. But one of the things I was doing when I went to Japan, one of the things on the list, the top thing on my list, was to continue this exploration that my grandmother in spirit had been communicating to me to explore, which is the dragon, and eventually led to this idea of connecting to Benzaiten, the goddess Benzaiten, the Japanese goddess, and the dragon who is subservient to Benzaiten. And it was leading me to go visit this particular temple in Japan, in Lake Biwa. Lake Biwa is the largest lake in Japan. It's huge. And there's an island, Chikubu-sama, where the story around that island is about Benzaiten and the dragon. There's a story of a woman who travels to the island with this old man, and they get to the island and they're told they can't come and step on the island because she's a woman. And then the the priest comes down and says, no, it's okay because this temple is for Benzaiten, and Benzaiten is a woman, and so this was she could come on board, aboard the island. She comes on the island, and she then she says, I'm actually the incarnation of Benzaiten, and then the old man transforms and says, I'm actually the dragon. And this is a ancient no play, Japanese no play for that particular island. So I didn't really know all that when I picked out that place to go visit, because I was sort of guided to go to this particular island. So that was high on my bucket list, and so that was big. And when I went, it was interesting. The day before, just getting to Lake Biwa, I was getting very emotional. And I even said to Chris, gosh, it's kind of weird. I feel kind of emotional. And I didn't know if it was because I've been looking forward to this for so much, but it was this emotion. I felt, it was hard to kind of pin down, but I also felt the sadness and just felt this emotion. Did the island thing, and then when we left at the end of the day, I felt so satisfied. It was just really this deep satisfaction and this warmth and this strong feeling. And I posted some pictures, and then later Elaine saw those pictures, and she's like, oh, I see the divine feminine all over the place here. And so I thought, wow, that was really kind of cool. But I share that story because just this past Thursday, I had the Spiritual Life Foundation, we had our online Ancient New Way session on Thursday night. It's an online class. We were looking at the recent UFOs, UAPs, the unidentified flying objects, and all the things that are happening in New Jersey and the military bases and all of these different things. And I was giving this presentation, and I ended up showing this one particular video. And the video was of he was a former Special Forces military man, and then one of the things then he got pulled into this unit where they were they were responsible for picking up UFOs that had either landed or crashed, and he would pick these up in his helicopter and then take it to the base wherever he was supposed to take these things. We are really, and by the way, we're really at this point where we're not really asking the question anymore. Are there extraterrestrial lives? Are there these things out there? We're really at the point of what are these things? Who are these things? You know, that's really where we're at now. If you spend any time looking into this in terms of the news cycle and everything that's going on, that's really where we're at with all of this now. But he talks about picking up this particular egg and taking it to one location, and then he says, but the other object that they picked up was more of like a pentagon, like a disc. And when he went to go retrieve it, he said he got super emotional. And he's testified on this interview that this is what he's having. And he got super emotional. And he felt sadness. He started to cry. He just felt all this. He said it was beautiful. And he didn't know what to do, but he just kind of hunkered down and carried out his project. And so as he lifted this thing up, and what he realized was that he was making a connection with this energy, this vibration, and he described it as the divine feminine. And he said it was all feminine, not masculine at all. He goes, it was like, you know, like God, but it was all feminine. And he says it's guiding him now, and it's protecting him. And this is why he is now talking. His name is Jake Barber. If you go to YouTube, go to Jake Barber. And this video, I believe, just came out within the last week. And this is one of the whistleblowers in terms of the whole UFO, UAP things that are going on. And when I watched that on Thursday, because you know how I am. I'll set up videos for the group to watch, and I haven't even watched them myself. And then we'll start watching it, and I'm like, holy smokes! And it made me think about my experience of going out on the boat to Chikubu-sama on that little island, and just that feeling. Now, my intensity was maybe 1/20th of what his intensity was, but it was the way he described it was the same kind of feeling. So I just share this because I just think we are in some unique times. John had said to me, the foundation is going to be needed over these next 4 years, right? Because of the political climate we are in the midst of. But I think what it's really calling to us is that it really is calling us to this period in our time where we have to find the divine not out there, but within ourselves, within our own being, within our own hearts, within our own sort of balanced souls, and that we're going to have to do that. That we can't count on, this political party or that group or this group. We're not going to be able to count on that to see us through this time of transition. We're clearly in a time of transition. And so that's what I think when people talk about the divine feminine coming in and moving the patriarchy out. I really think this is one of the mechanisms that is at play, is that it's calling us to come within ourselves and to really sort of settle ourselves so that we could be a part of that energy that is literally coming in so many ways and in so many places. So anyway, I just that's what I wanted to share, and so I thought I'd take that time. Any questions or comments from anyone?
Roger?
Yes.
I just listened to the podcast with Luke that you did.
Yes.
Yeah. So, speaking, more than Mary Magdalene, of course, you touched on Mary, Jesus' mother, and I just love the sort of explanation of the virgin birth. That it was that possible that Mary belonged to this sect that could actually, impregnate themselves, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I thought, that really spoke, because to me, I believe in miracles, and I'm a follower of Jesus. And I still hear, people all the time say, yeah, but, I just can't get behind that virgin birth, And
Right.
that will just sort of default, everything else, right? Invalidate. Yeah.
Yeah, and then that particular story or that evidence comes from Edgar Casey.
Mm-hmm.
And Casey really does this deep explanation, and today's academia, we call it the cult of Isis. Academia will talk about the cult of Isis, and it really comes out of Egypt. Well, there were these Egyptian mystery schools. There were also Jewish mystery schools, and these groups were much more esoteric in their nature. And so, Mary, the mother of Jesus, Mary Magdalene, that's what they were essentially a part of. The Essenes were sort of evolved out of the Egyptian, what today's language is the cult of Isis. But again, it was really about balance and power. Balance within oneself, not about power, balance within oneself. And I really do think that in that era, what our minds were capable of doing is very different than what the limitations that we now have on us now. I really think that the Enlightenment was very good on one hand. On the other hand, it probably created blocks. We have these built-in blocks of what is possible. And so I hope Elaine, I'm going to share a little bit. So one of the things I've been doing with Elaine is we meet and I ask her all these, in a channel session, I now ask her all these questions about, okay, how did they make the pyramids? Okay, and so her channel, the channeled spirit was Star Sun, and came through and said that, yeah, the limitation of our minds, now we can't understand how that works, but essentially it was sort of some kind of psionics, use of the mind along with, other tools to be able to construct the pyramid. It's, is how it worked. So again, as I'm doing that type of research, and Casey himself, clearly, there was this group of 12 women that were part of this priestess group that, yeah, and it wasn't initially clear that it was going to be Mary that would be the carrier of that soul that was to come in.